Hello and welcome everyone to this new audio recording. Now, today I've received a question from Vicky, and Vicky asks, here we go, just reading it. Hi Toby, I have a question if you have some time to do a talk on it. It's something I've struggled with for a few weeks now, and I'm unable to find any guidance online. The world is obviously changing and not always in our best interests. My question is, how can I engage in current issues and oppose or resist things I object to? For example, mandatory vaccinations, media censorship, etc. Whilst at the time being accepting of what is and not resisting things in a way which leads the attachment to a desired outcome and my own suffering. Which leads the attachment to a desired outcome and my own suffering. Any help would be greatly appreciated. Thanks. Okay, so that's the question. Let's have a look at that. Now it starts with her saying that it's something that she's struggled with for a few weeks now. And she's unable to find any guidance online. Now, this struggling with something like this is probably quite normal right now. Like a lot of people are probably struggling with this. It's evident if you look around online. This is definitely a topic. Lots of people struggle with current government decisions and the way we are currently, you might say, kind of managed. And what comes out of this, all the informations and the various channels online are going haywire, and there's a whole lot of all kinds of information. So being bombarded with such an amount of information, so many things, so many topics, so many possibilities is surely overwhelming. And not only that, it has a profound impact on the mind. If you are kind of inundated in this kind of flood of constant news and information, the mind is conditioned by that. It is shaped, it is formed. So we should probably, first of all, be very, very careful what kind of information we consume. It is a problem with information is always that it comes from some sources. Somebody is putting it out there. There's interests behind those sources, why we put it out there, and it's very often, unfortunately, not to just simply inform people. It's very often based on egoic kind of motivations, such as, may I be more important, may I be seen as a valid source of information. Maybe it's just sometimes the desire for attention or something like that. So there's a whole kind of world of motivations behind all these sources. So that's one thing that we should consider. Second thing is that there is no single information source which can claim to be absolutely right or absolutely objective. That we should also, I think, consider. It's really important. We're talking about views, we're talking about opinions, and very often those opinions are stated as facts. And they're backed up by other people who are following this kind of type of information, and then also back this up with apparent facts. And so in that way, really no information source, whether it's an information source that is kind of funded by the government or funded by mainstream science or funded by kind of the fringe science groups at the side, or funded by, I don't know, whatever kind of interest, it is super confusing to make up our minds at the moment and to say that this kind of information source is absolutely 100% correct, and I faithfully subscribe to this information source and I allow it to condition my mind and shape my thinking and shape the way I approach the world with it. So with any kind of information, there always comes interests there comes just human mind stuff. And if you've ever had a look at your own mind, then you notice it's very chaotic, that there is not really any discernible order in it. It just simply picks up things, and then it digests them, and it combines them with its own old kind of content that it's accumulated in the past, and then it spits out something completely new that is a combination of one's own old experiences and the old content of one's mind now mingled and mixed with the new information that we have. So it's super complex. It's highly complex. Keeping that in mind helps with what, you might wonder. It in my opinion, it helps with keeping the mind calm and less reactive. That's probably a quality that might be beneficial for a whole lot of people these days, not to just immediately just jump onto any kind of information that looks legit and immediately take it on and immediately react to that source of information with rage or anger or any of these kind of tense emotions that make us sick, unhealthy. And not only ourselves, but everybody who has to kind of put up with us and live with us in the same place and so forth. So it's always the question, what does this information do with you? Does it create tension, fear, anxiety, worries, confusion, etc.? Then two things could be done. One, you might observe clearly that how you are approaching the information internally, how you are looking at this kind of information, and what it does with you, and why it does that with you. Like, are there any investments on your side? Is this kind of information threatening your investments in some way? You could ask yourself that and look a little bit deeper and see what's going on within yourself. You could also consider the information source itself. Is it really valuable? Is it something that I could do without? Or is it something that I couldn't do without at all? Would I die? Would I get severely ill? Would I fall into extreme danger if I wasn't consuming that kind of information? What if this kind of information wasn't part of my life? How would my life be different? What if this information source would completely overrule my mind and kind of completely condition it? In what kind of direction would it take me if I would become an extremist holder of that kind of opinion, of that kind of information? Who would I turn into? Who would I become? I think this is an excellent question to ask ourselves. It's no matter where you're at right now, you can ask yourself always, who am I becoming right now? By consuming this kind of food, who am I becoming right now? What will happen to me? By consuming this type of information, who will I become? Right? But then you can see there are people who are a bit further down the line who have consumed this type of information for much longer. Who are they becoming? It's so clearly obvious if you're looking around online and you see the various comments that people make, you see the various kind of fears that they express, and all that kind of thing. Is that something that I aspire to become? It's a very, very good question to ask ourselves. Like, what will this type of information turn me into? Who will I become consuming this type of food? Because it's a type of nutrition, it's a type of nourishment. Is it junk food? Is it healthy food? I don't know. We have to discern that for ourselves, and we can discern it by what does it do with us. So once I consume that food, once I consume the information, what's the result? What's happening with my life? What's happening with myself? And that, fortunately, is quite evident. We can see that clearly. We can't really say whether this information is right or wrong, but we can clearly see what it does with us, consuming it. And as I said before, watch out for both. What does the information do with you, and what do you do with the information on the inside of your mind? The way you react to this information, of course, is a conditioned type of reaction. You cannot help but to react to the information that comes in the way you have learned to react. It's a bit like a computer program. You put something in and then it does something. The computer program can't help but to do exactly that. You don't know, if you press the enter key, then something will happen. It's like any kind of machine, right? If you press a button, the machine does a certain thing. It fulfills a function. The mind is identical. If you put a certain type of information in it, it is not only conditioned and colored by it, it also reacts to it. So have a look at both of these aspects. Like, how does it color your mind, and how does your mind react to it? That gives you further insight. It can show you very clearly that if you consume a certain type of information, it feeds a certain type of reaction within you. And that's what's interesting. It might be the reaction of fear. So maybe you seek out a certain information source because there is a secret subconscious addiction to feeling fearful. So you consume anything that leads to that fear. Unconsciously, of course. You're not waking up in the morning and making a conscious decision going like, all right, today I'd like to feel a bit of fear, so let me see what helps me to feel fearful. Okay, I need to consume this type of information. Then you read the news and then you feel fearful as a result, and then you go, okay, I've achieved my goal. Now I feel nice and fearful. It's not how people live, right? It happens mostly with complete unconsciousness. We're just going about our days very much often like a robot, just reacting, just impulse kind of behavior. There is no awareness, no consciousness, no nothing. I can't tell you which type of information is the right type of information. I can only encourage you to look at yourself. So I can't tell you, is this thing with mandatory vaccinations, is it true, is it not? And what you should do as a response, should you go to the street and protest it? Should you not go to the street and protest it? What's the best course of action? I can't tell. For that, the world is way too complex. There's way too many equations that are running in the background. To make any kind of decision like we should all be doing this or subscribing to that, because we don't know and we can't estimate the long-term results of our decisions. If you look back at the history of the world, human beings have always made decisions based on the information that was available. And did it do anything good? Well, we could say that the world is changing and situations are changing. The world is turning and spinning, and situations are turning and spinning with it. People are born, people die, people get ill, people experience suffering and try to find their way out of suffering. The question is, will a certain type of information, such as political information or something like this, will it be the way out of suffering? No. And what is the fundamental motivation that drives a human being to do things? It is suffering. And the wish to end that kind of suffering, such as, for example, in your case, it might be confusion, Like, as you write here, my question is, how can I engage in current issues and oppose or resist things I object to? For example, mandatory vaccinations, media censorship, etc., whilst at the same time being accepting of what is and not resisting things in a way which leads the attachment to a desired outcome and my own suffering. You end that question with suffering. And I think that's at the core of the issue. It is really, if you boil down this question, you might as well ask, how can I be free from suffering? Because everything you express is a sort of suffering, right? The whole question is an expression of confusion. How can I? I don't know how. Me neither. I also don't know. I'm not in a better position. When it comes to the matters of the world and the constant spinning of the world, I simply don't know. Here's another opinion of mine. I think far too many people rest assured in their own knowledge. They think they know. And it's not that frequent that you hear someone say, I don't know, I have no clue, I have no idea. And it might be helpful to start there, right? To start from a point of, well, I don't know. I don't know if my action right now will produce long-term benefit and well-being for myself and for others around me. Or maybe not. Maybe my action produces long-term benefit and well-being for myself while hurting others in many ways. Now, should I care about that? Should I care about the pain that other people have as a consequence to my action? Should I? Can I? Will I? It's very, very complex, in other words. It's difficult to say this kind of action will definitely make the world a better place. There's a whole lot of people around who want to save the world. They want to even some, they would like to force their actions upon others because their idea is, my idea is so good and it's so pure and it's so amazing that it will be of benefit to everybody around. Therefore, let's enforce it. Let's make it mandatory because it's so good, right? If you follow that kind of path, you quickly end up with a fascist or communist system where, like we force everyone to work towards my personal idea of utopia, whether you like it or not. Let's push you in this direction, right? And so I'm not in a position where I can say, at least currently not. I'm not in a position where I can say it is right to stand up and fight, or it is wrong to stand up and fight. And I'm personally not really interested in figuring that out. Is it right to stand up or is it wrong to stand up? I'm personally interested in, am I suffering? And how can I end this suffering? That's my personal interest. I don't really want to know much more about the world, to be honest, because to me the world is unreliable. It is something that is continuously changing. If you turn it to the left, soon after that it will start turning to the right again. If you breathe in, then it will be followed by breathing out. It's a continuous change. It's a dual world. Does that imply? It implies that there is no stability to anything. You can't create infinite and stable goodness. This goodness that you might create is others will experience that as bad. So what do you want to do about that? And soon enough, your own little good world that you have created will be invaded by those who oppose it and resist it. Now, who is right? The ones that inhabit the good world, or the bad terrorists on the outside which are invading your little good world? Who is right? I think it's just a continuous change of elements. Each human being a bit like an atom, bouncing around, following its own laws of cause and result, which is so complex and so difficult to discern, to understand. And so my own personal awareness withdraws from that. I've kind of over the years lost my interest in trying to fix things outside. Instead, and it goes even that far, like fixing my wife, for example. Like when she does something that I disagree with, right? She might be doing something that I dislike, that makes me feel uncomfortable, that I disagree with. Then, of course, the first impulse that I sense is, I would like to change her. If I could only change her, I wouldn't have to suffer her. But at the bottom of all this, isn't there just simply the desire to be free from suffering? I wish I would not have to suffer. So why not go right there to that point? Why not bring all our energy into that quest? May I find an end to suffering, and no matter what, if the world goes crazy, I wish that I can keep my own stability to be directed on my own mind and to free myself and the world from my misery, from my suffering, from my anger, from my inner conflictedness in my being. That is my aspiration. So yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult question to be honest with you. I think yes, just like you, I feel confusion when I think about this topic of, yes, should we kind of get up or should we resist? I don't know. I honestly don't know which one is a good course of action. Well, many of you, they know the story already, right? This kind of story, good, bad, who knows? That's apt. This is something that we can probably relate to this question a little bit. Right? There's this Chinese horse farmer. It's an old Chinese story. And he has one horse, and it kind of escapes one day, and then it comes back with other horses, and all the time the villagers would make a remark, and they would say to something that is apparently good. They would say, wow, what great news, now you have extra horses in your stable. And the old man always says, good, bad, who knows? You can check this story online. You just Google it, good, bad, who knows? You'll have nice examples of that story. There's also many different versions of it, but it illustrates that we don't know what's good or bad, because good and bad are dynamic. They're processes. Good turns into bad, bad turns into good. So considering that, the question is, well, what kind of action should I take? Because it will certainly benefit some on the short term, while it will harm others. There is no action in the world which will not be harmful for some and beneficial for others. Maybe an exception would be all the actions which are directly directed to the mind itself, the direct search for happiness within oneself. One doesn't let the mind flow outside and try to manipulate and change the world, right? There's another kind of little story. It comes from the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, which is an old text from Shantideva. And one of the verses in there, which kind of struck me when I read that, was, I paraphrase it, okay? It's kind of the essence like that. One can't wrap the entire world in leather so that one doesn't have to step into thorns. But one can wrap one's own feet and it has the same effect. So it's something amongst those lines. Really, every human being desires an end of suffering. That's what makes the world go round and round and round. It's just the problem that we're looking for the end of suffering in all the wrong places. We think I'm suffering because of, let's take your example, mandatory vaccinations. That's why I suffer. Is that correct, though? Are you suffering because of that? Or are you suffering because you don't know how not to suffer? Because the world will have its ways with you, whether you like it or not. There is an idea, that there is some sort of safety and we can somehow create it. And when we have that little bubble, nothing will happen to us. Nothing bad will happen to us. But is that really true? Can your actions really shield you from future pain? Or is future pain still something that's uncertain? Is it still something that's that we don't really have any control over. And yes, it freaks people out. It is something that this is unsettling, considering that the future is completely uncertain, and the concept of safety and goodness and all that, it is subject to change. It is with that also completely uncertain. So we can't really find any reliable state that we could aspire to outside of ourselves. So we can spend our entire life being an activist, going through protests and doing this and that, and in the end, if you look at the bigger picture, millions of years of evolution, and it doesn't make much difference. People will still suffer. We had a Mahatma Gandhi who made a huge difference with his kind of marches. You had Mother Teresa and so forth. They all made difference in their own way. But what they all have in common, I would say, those people who made a huge difference, was that they've tended to their own suffering first, before they were directing their attention outward again. And then kind of being concerned for the welfare of those around them, those who are close to them. You can make some difference. It's not that you have no power at all. But also the problem with it is, that the differences that you make will not be lasting, and they will be subject to change. They will be unstable and all that. If you're okay with that, still, you need to go out and make a difference. But we can only make the difference if our mind comes from the right place. If you come from anger, and if you come from resistance and tension and all that, then your actions will only cause something that is alike. As the cause, so the result. Now, if you're coming from tension, what do you think the result is going to be like? Well, it's going to be tense, right? It's a tense result. While I'm saying that I don't know the long-term result of our actions and how they will develop and how they will impact each one of those billions of people and animals who are living on this world, this I don't know. But I also don't say you should be inactive. Neither do I say you should be active. I think the most important point is know thyself. Know yourself thoroughly. Turn within and see very clearly where are you coming from, who are you becoming right now by pursuing this course of action. That kind of gives you a chance to somehow maneuver through life in a balanced way. You're neither becoming a left kind of extremist or a right kind of extremist. You're staying nicely in the middle. You're balanced. You're aware. There's no extreme form of action or thought or emotion that pushes you unconsciously to react to the way things are. But your mind is free and unbound. You have a thorough understanding of your own suffering and the end of it. Then your actions will impact naturally and in a very powerful way those who are close to you, and through that those who are close to them, and through that those who are close to them, and so forth. So you do have a wholesome, peaceful, and good impact on the world. The way I would say it is, rather than trying to liberate the world from suffering, may I liberate the world from my suffering. Make that a starting point and work hard on that. You do a huge service to yourself and all those who are around you. Now, if you do have any questions, please send them to me. I'm receiving your questions either through the messenger or, by email or something like this, so we can discuss them in the sessions. And I think for today, this is more than enough. I hope it was helpful in some way and kind of gave you a different perspective or kind of the chance to reflect a little bit in a different way on these kind of topics. And hopefully it led to you becoming more self-aware and conscious and seeing what's really going on within yourself. And stay in touch. And for now, I say goodbye and wish you a wonderful weekend.